Hello and welcome back to the Finding Your Feet podcast, a podcast show dedicated to helping you get closer to your true, authentic self by helping you find your feet in life. This is episode 40, can you believe it? And today we have a new guest on the show.
Yes, today we are joined by Ryan Stevens. He's a mindset coach and he's got a very interesting life story that he shares with us in this episode. He's also super passionate about cold water therapy, which is really why we wanted to get him on to speak about that, because me and Abby have been so curious about it. And I'm sure you guys have probably heard a lot about it, about Wim Hof and all these people, jumping in icy rivers, seas and having cold showers. Why are they doing it? What are the benefits? So we talk about that. And we also talk about psychedelics in the sense of helping with mental health issues, because a lot of new research coming out about that. So we have a little chat about that too, but we cover off a lot of different interesting topics, and I hope you enjoy the interview.
Yeah, we literally did. We went down so many different avenues, but we did really want to talk about the cold water therapy as well. So there's loads of tips for that. So grab your notebooks because there's so many great things he says.
Yeah, lots of good advice. But before we begin the episode, we just want to read out our Apple Podcast review of the week. So this week's review is from @ER Haddon. Best podcast of 2020. One of my favorite podcasts to come out of 2020. So much positivity and really educational regarding manifesting, etc. Love listening to Grace and Abby and can't wait to level up in 2021. Thanks, gals.
I love that. Best podcast of 2020. That's the energy we need.
What a compliment. Thank you very much for that lovely review. And if you guys want to be featured in Review of the Week next week, if you want us to read out your review at the beginning of the episode, then go and leave us some feedback on Apple Podcasts and let us know what you think, and we might read out yours.
But before we get into the chat with Ryan, we just got a quick word from our sponsor.
Yes, our sponsor is BetterHelp. That's help, H-E-L-P. And we are so proud to be partnering up with a company whose mission it is to help you start living a happier life from today.
Yes, BetterHelp is a professional online counselling service, and they'll set you up with a therapist in under 48 hours. And then if it turns out that you're not too keen on your therapist, you can actually change for free.
Yes, it's a professional, secure online counselling service that's available for clients all over the world. And at any time, you can access your account and message your therapist, and you'll always receive a quick response. So you can easily set up weekly video or phone sessions with your therapist. It's so easy to use. You can literally get the professional support from a therapist from your own home, which is absolutely perfect, especially during the current COVID times. We're in lockdown still in the UK. It's been a difficult time. So if you need a bit of support from a professional therapist or counselor, then BetterHelp is an amazing place to go and get that.
Yes, and it's also way more affordable than your traditional offline counselling. And there's over 1 million people using BetterHelp today. So if you want to go and check out any reviews, you can go to betterhelp.com/reviews.
Yes, and they are very kindly giving our listeners 10% off their first month of therapy. So like we said, it's way more affordable than your traditional offline counselling, but then you also get an extra 10% off your first month if you use our link. If you just go to the link, betterhelp.com/finding your feet, that's betterhelp.com/finding your feet, you will automatically get 10% off your first month. And we'll leave the link in the show notes of this episode so you can easily go and get started. But literally, you go on the website, you fill out a quiz so that they can get a really clear picture about who you are, what are your needs, what are the areas of your life you need help with, because they've got a huge range of therapists on there with so many different expertise. There's somebody out there that can help you with your problem, because we're all unique, and it's important that you find the right person that can help you. So that is guaranteed on BetterHelp, because they've got so many options to sign you up with. So it's an amazing place to get therapy, and I've done therapy in the past, and had I known BetterHelp existed, I probably would have used it, because it is so much cheaper than the normal traditional offline counselling. But just because it's cheaper doesn't mean the quality is any less. It's amazing. As we said, it's got amazing reviews. So if you want to take charge of your mental health and get a bit of professional support from the comfort of your own home, then join BetterHelp and get 10% off your first month of therapy with our link. But let's get into the episode.
Okay, I'm just going to start by inviting Ryan onto the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
That's all right. It's nice to be on you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice to connect. I'm actually going to start by just explaining why we asked you to come on. So basically, I kept seeing on, I think it was on Facebook actually, that you were going for these sea dips all the time. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, I never see people doing stuff like this. And I basically said to Grace, I was like, I've seen this guy. He's going for these C dips. Seems like he's got a really good energy. I was like, there's something about him. I was like, we need to get him on the podcast. And it actually turns out that you have a very interesting story that we'd love to talk about. So please, can you start by, just explain a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, no problem at all. So, I mean, where I am currently and what I'm doing currently, I'm a mindset and accountability coach. So I've been doing that for the last couple of months. I'll go a little bit more into the, in depth about that later if you want as well. But essentially, it's that has come from my I love helping people, basically, and like that is my kind of main thing in life. My main goal is to positively impact as many people's lives as possible, which has kind of led me on the journey to where I am now. But go back a few years. So, I mean, back when I was 19, I'd probably say that's the best part best place to start the story. I mean, when I was 19, I opened up a tattoo studio, which was like kind of a bit of an alien thing to do because I like tattoos, but I wasn't actually a tattoo artist myself. So I had, a couple of people working in the shop. Me and a friend were running the business. So we had that for about 2.5 years. That was kind of the main starting point of my story almost because, before then I'd been to college and things like that, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. I started looking at business and started studying it and found an interest in it. But I think it was the creative element, which I enjoyed more so than the actual running of a business. But anyway, I had the tattoo studio for a few years, which was going great. I learned a massive amount about, business and, just life in general, because I met so many different people from all different walks of life. But then things started to go bad later on probably about 2 years in. Where it was, me and my business partner weren't getting on much anymore. There was, just a lot of friction in the business in general. And I pretty much knew that it was all going to come to an end and they were going to open up another studio elsewhere. And rather than kind of confronting it head on or just actually looking at what options I had, I got into a bit of a depressive state of mind. And when I say the depressive state of mind, I don't like to use the word depression really, because I mean, when a couple of years later, I actually worked with people who had, severe depression, and I definitely didn't have, I wouldn't class it as major depression, because I know a lot of people can't get out of bed in the morning with it and things like that. So I say a depressive state of mind just because I didn't really know I couldn't see the wood through the trees. I couldn't work out where I needed to go in life and what I needed to do. But anyway, as a bit of a way out, or a subconscious way out, I started to sell drugs. Now, I was doing that for only a short few months, but I didn't realize at the time that was pretty much my way of escape, I'd say. I wanted to almost cover my back in case there was any losses in the business. But realistically, there was two elements at play. I think one was the fact that I just wanted this. In a way, I think I wanted to get caught almost, just to take me away from the whole situation and to kind of, I don't know, just get out of it all. And I think the other element of it was I was very ego driven at that point, where I was kind of, I was afraid of being seen as a failure. And I think looking at, for example, with my parents, struggling for money and things when I was younger, I think seeing that almost made me go, right, I don't want to be, I don't want to have to struggle for money in life. I don't want to have to be seen as, not as a failure, but I don't want to, struggle all the time. I kind of wanted to see, that was what I seen success as, basically the ability to not have to struggle as much financially anymore. And that was probably the main driver in wanting to set up my first business. But like I said, that was a very ego driven, thing, in the sense that I was just always, I didn't want to be, I didn't want the business to fail just because I'd be seen as a failure and be end up in debt and so on and so forth. But anyway, I got caught selling drugs and I ended up getting sentenced to 28 months in prison. So that was, I served 9. But it was a 28-month sentence. But I that was kind of a big turning point for me. Up until this point, I was, like I said, very, business driven. None of my friends were doing that kind of stuff. And I almost felt like I was on top of the world to an extent. I felt like I was pursuing my dreams and doing everything the way I wanted. But then all of a sudden, I hit rock bottom. I was, lower than I ever thought I would be. I never thought I'd, go to prison. It was never in my nature. And I think a lot of people would say that as well. But yeah, we kind of, I was in there then for 9 months. But like I said, it was a big learning curve and a big turning point in the sense that I got to meet so many different people from all different walks of life. I met one of my best friends there, which I'll go into later as well, because this connecting the dots. I always like to talk about that, but I'll talk about that in a sec. And basically, I met like a lot of different people, like murderers, for example. I sat and played chess with a murderer, and coincidentally, he was one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. And I think that really started to change my perspective, because I thought, well, here's somebody who was 20 when he committed a crime, but he's actually he was 41 at the time of meeting him. But he'd spent 21 years in prison, so he'd spent longer in prison than he'd spent on the planet before he committed, his crime. And when he told me, what he did, it was horrific. He'd literally somebody tried shooting him. He ended up catching the guy, took him and tied him to a tree and then shot him. And I'm sitting there playing chess with this guy. I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh mate, you've checkmated me. Oh, won but yeah, it was a very, very, very obscure, really weird time. But like I said, there was a lot of learning points. And, I've never actually been to university myself, but people have asked me, like, would you have rather university or would you do that again? And I'd say I'd do that again in a heartbeat. Not to say I'd like to go back to prison, but I wouldn't change the fact that it happened, just because of everything that's happened since and the kind of development, in my mindset, and life since that point. But yeah, I mean, after that, then I came out and I thought, well, I'm not going to let this hold me back. I went and found a job within 4 days of coming out. I worked through a few different, worked in a few different jobs then for a few months. And I ended up working in the drug and alcohol sector for a while after it as well, for about a year. So I was helping people who went through substance misuse, mental health issues. And that's where I really got to see the other side of it. I thought I had, really kind of like depressive thoughts, depressive, feelings at one point. But then I got to meet people who were in such a worse place. And then I was able to use my experience to kind of help them in that capacity. And that was the first real time I thought, you know what, I've kind of, I've not found my calling, but I thought I actually really enjoy the helping people aspect of this. But the organization I was working for, I didn't really resonate with, and the kind of processes and the data side of it. I never really got on with that side of it. Fast forward though, I ended up setting up another business. So it was a men's clothing store in Carmarthen. I had that for about a year. I had a men's and female. I can't say it. Like a unisex fashion store, then an online fashion store. After that business shut down, just because retail was really difficult. Had a food delivery franchise for a little while, and none of these things, none of them really resonated with me. I enjoyed the whole setting it up and the excitement of it, but then when I actually had the business set up, I was like, you know what, I don't like this. I don't enjoy it. And I started to look into myself then and think, well, what's wrong with me? Why don't I enjoy these things? And that's taken a lot of time really, and a lot of introspection and reflection to figure out what I enjoy and what I don't enjoy. And I think that what I always advocate for people now is to just try new things, explore interests, because the more you do, the more you start to really orientate yourself and your life in the direction you want to take it in. And that's kind of what brought me on to what I'm doing now. So I set up Ideas and Beers with two friends, which is a community for people who are, have got kind of self-development focused mindsets, if that makes sense. So the, interesting conversations, not just talking about football and things like that. It was literally to bring men, women, everybody just to these little meetings that otherwise they probably wouldn't have met, because they're all from different walks of life. And it's worked really, really well, in all honesty, because we did a couple of events and, loads of meetups before the lockdown, and it's created a real good community of people. And some of my, closest friends and a lot of the people that I rely on for advice and guidance, they're all from the Ideas and Beers group. So I found that was a real turning point for me, because I thought, all of a sudden I'm starting to surround myself with the people that I want to be more like, and also the people who are on my wavelength. And that was a real turning point. But yeah, there was, well, I think if I didn't do that, and so like, I'll go back onto the connecting the dots thing. I mean, if all of that didn't happen, the prison thing, and, I would have never been going to Carmarthen to see one of the guys or one of my friends from in there who I get classed as one of my best mates now. And if I hadn't been going there, I would have never thought, right, I want to set up the business in Carmarthen, the particular business I did. If that didn't happen, I would have never set up any of the things from there because the people I was involved with, I wouldn't have met. Ideas and beers wouldn't have happened. And, I wouldn't have met some of the, greatest people I've ever met in my life and some of the people I rely on and really enjoy their company. So it was really easy to look back on it and reflect on it and see those little milestones, those little stepping stones to where I got now. But yeah, I think that was one of the key lessons I've ever learned is connecting the dots and just trusting the process, almost just thinking, even though I can't see where I'm going right now, I got to trust that it is the right path for me just because it feels right, or I'm able to take a lesson from it, even if it's like a tough time. You just look for the lessons and then think how you can get through that and come out on the other side. But yeah, that's what basically brought me on to do the mindset coaching and everything I'm doing now.
No, I honestly think your story is amazing. And I think it's really interesting how you say about connecting the dots, because it's so true that if you hadn't have been through that experience and gone to prison and met those people, then you wouldn't be where you are now. And even though I think sometimes it maybe when you went to prison, you thought, oh my God, like, what the hell am I doing? What am I going to do? But it's like when you think about that graph of life, like success and failure, like it's never a straight line. You have to go up and down and you have to go through life experiences. And as well, I really like how you come in to speak to us about this, because I feel like in today's society, we are living in this kind of like cancel culture where it's like you do something wrong or something happens and it's like game over. But I love how you've completely thought, absolutely not. Like you've taken this bad experience and this low point and you thought, what can I do to like really improve myself? So I just wanted to ask, when you kind of like went into prison, do you think it was a process thinking, right, now I need to turn my life around? Or was it like straight away when you realized like today is the day? Or yeah, like was it kind of like a process?
Do you know what? It's an interesting question because it wasn't like, right, this is ground zero almost, like, at first, like I kind of got there and you get in your own head quite a lot, you're reflecting on what you've done. You're like, oh, I've let people down. People are going to think I'm a scumbag, I've achieved all this stuff and now I'm like right the way, I've gone further back than where I ever thought I could. Ever thought I'd be. It's kind of like you go over all these thoughts, but it's all negative stuff. You're essentially what you do, I think, when you get in those situations is you kick yourself down even further. And this is what's concerning really about the prison population and people who, enter a depressive state of mind, do things similar to what I've done, is, even though they may want to change and be better, sometimes they can get caught up by the labels that they put on themselves. So, for example, scumbag, prisoner, criminal, etc., etc. And those are labels that other people might put on us, but they're also labels we put on ourselves when we think about what other people are thinking of us. And I think that is probably the most dangerous thing, because labeling, once you label yourself or somebody labels you and then you adopt that label, you think, actually, yeah, this rings true. You start to kind of live a life in that direction almost. You start living the life of the labeled person. So, for example, someone who is, if you say, oh, I'm a criminal, that implies that you can carry on committing crimes. Whereas, what I learned, and this was from one of my mentors, Neville, he taught me one of the courses that ended up the working with substance misuse course I did, which ended up getting me into the sector I worked in for a year or so after prison. But I also went back into prison actually delivering courses as well, which was quite interesting. But one of the key things that I learned from him was to take away those labels. So rather than, saying I'm a criminal, you say I'm somebody who has committed a crime in the past. You talk about it in a different tense. I think the other one he gave as an example was, I'm not a prisoner. I'm just somebody who is currently serving a prison sentence. And I think it's a very slight way of shifting your mindset. But when you start to look at the other end of it, you start thinking, I'm just somebody who's serving a prison sentence, but then while I'm out of prison, that's it. I'm somebody who's got a criminal record, but not somebody who's still a criminal, because it just implies that that's the life you live. I think when you adopt those particular labels. And yeah, that was kind of the one thing I learned. But to answer your question, I think it was more of a process of learning to forgive myself and forgive others. To do with the business and things that were going on, because I kind of blaming a lot of other people at the time. But I took ownership of it. I forgave who I needed to, and I think that was one of the key things that helped me move forward. I think was just forgiving those who I needed to, forgiving myself mostly, but then also just kind of understanding that what I did was out of character for me, but it was also something that was done under a particular stress almost. And then I think going forward, then I was able to recognize when I'd be doing things that weren't aligned with who I am. If we're too high stress, for example, and I'd almost navigate away from it then. But it was a process, and I'd say it's almost self-development is a process in general. I think if you're in those situations and you want to make a change, you've just got to be willing to continually learn, continually grow, and just keep plugging away at it. And over time you come out to that place and you start to feel completely different. But yeah, it takes time.
Wow. So how old were you when you went to prison? Because obviously you started your first business when you were 19. That is so young to start a business and like open a shop.
Yeah,
Um, so that must have been hard. Like, I mean, hats off to you for doing that. I think that's great. I think it's good when people just dive in and do things regardless of their age. But even just managing that at such a young age must have been quite challenging. But how old were you by the time you actually ended up going to prison and serving your sentence?
21. So I was 21 at the time. Yeah, I was 21. I came out when I would have been 20. Was it 21? Yeah, I believe it was 21. So it was 2015, March 2015, and I was out on the February the 2016th. Yeah, so I spent my 22nd birthday in there.
Wow. Yeah, that is so young to be in there.
Yeah, it was. Looking back, actually, I've always felt a lot older than I am. I think looking back, I probably didn't I didn't feel like I was as young as what I was in there. And like I said, yeah, it was a great learning experience, and getting through that was a testament then to the start of everything I'm doing now in terms of resilience, mindset, and I think with going back to the C dips which you mentioned, that's probably why it resonates with me quite a lot. So I do ultra marathons. I've done a couple of marathons. I've done 2 ultra marathons, a 35 miler and a 50 miler. Also the C dips. It's all for me about building mental resilience and also pushing myself beyond my own perceived limits or limits that I'd previously set for myself. And I think when you start to do that, you really start to see that life is almost limitless to an extent. We put these self-imposed limits on ourselves, or other people put them on for us, and then we adopt them. And I think when you start to really challenge your own limiting beliefs and push yourself past those boundaries, either physical or mental boundaries, all of a sudden, then you start to think, well, what actually is possible? And I think it's quite a nice and really alien place to be at the same time. I think when you start doing that, you're stepping out of the crowd to a certain extent, and I think that's you might even lose friends over it. If you're challenging yourself daily and kind of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, so a lot of your friends are probably not going to get that, and you might actually notice that there is some friction. So, for example, with the C dips, or the mindset coaching, what I'm doing now, I've actually had a couple of people kind of attack me almost on social media for some of the stuff that I've put up, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's quite difficult to comprehend almost, but I think that whenever you're pushing yourself out of past those boundaries and doing something out of the norm, you are kind of opening yourself up to people who maybe don't understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. If you're putting yourself out there, then you're up there for positive feedback and potentially negative feedback. But yeah, you've got such an interesting story, and it's so that, like what we said at the start, we saw you posting all these things about the C dips, the cold water therapy, and then obviously we'd invited you on, and then we were looking at your Instagram some more, and then discovered that you've got that really interesting story as well. We didn't actually know that, but it's great that you can just like be really open, honest, talk about it, because you've obviously completely removed the label of that experience from yourself. And I think that in itself will just inspire so many people, because we do stuff like this all the like, not as in go to prison, commit crimes, but we always do things that we then wish we didn't do, whatever, but we hold it against ourselves for so long, and you just limit yourself and hold yourself back. And it's just great that you did it. Like you said, you forgave yourself, you forgave everybody else that was involved, and you fully moved on and turned your life around. But I'm interested in when was it? When did you get to the point where you realized, because obviously you tried so many different things, tattoo parlor, then the clothing business and stuff like that. When was it that sparked in you like, oh, actually, I feel like my true calling is to help people, and then you've decided to fully go down that path of what you're doing now?
I think I always knew that. I think it was always something that was ingrained in me, because I always, like, I enjoyed helping people, and I did it in different capacities. I'd always give people guidance and advice, even from quite a young age. You know what I mean? I'd always, like, people would almost rely on me or come to me for advice and guidance about like a variety of different things. And I found that quite interesting, the fact that they would come to me. And I actually noticed it was people that I didn't even. This was before before I was really active on social media with everything I'm doing. I did find that people would still message me and approach me that I didn't even know that well, and they'd be like, "This is really random, but I just thought I'd ask you. I felt like you'd be the right person to ask." And they just ask me like random questions, or like ask for advice, and I was kind of like, wow. It was a bit strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I don't understand how that's come about, but I believe, obviously, what you guys talk about, like energy and things like that. I think that I give off a lot of that energy. That's,
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, that's what some people have said to me before, and I think that's potentially why I knew early on that was what I need to be doing in some capacity, but I almost dodged around it for a long time. Like, I started doing these other businesses, purely for money. And then I realized that I'm not motivated by money. It's nice to have money. It's nice to want more of it, but it's not the be all and end all. My metrics for success were completely wrong. So all of a sudden now, in the like recent, months and years, I've started to look at the impact I'm making, the value I'm providing, rather than the money I'm making, because the money you make is only subjective of the value you provide and the impact you make. I think, it kind of, people aim for the money metric first rather than than the actual stuff that matters, and it comes back to having a real, like, a why behind you in life. I think once you know what your why is and what your values are, you can start to align your life in that direction, and then things will start to fall in place. Like, it's, I'd say it's with what I'm doing now, it's, with the podcast, for example, that I've got myself, like, that is my intention with that, and any of the content that I put out, is, as long as one person takes one positive message or thing from what we've said about, or what's been put out, in what is in the content, whether it's a post or a video or a podcast, as long as one person takes one positive message, then my mission's done, my mission's complete. So that's that's kind of what I'm at right now. And one of the things I am doing, actually, is I've got a year wall planner, where I'll just, like, basically, I want to positively impact someone's life or help somebody every single day. And as long as I do that, I get to put a big X, across it. So, I'm on day 14 today. Oh, is it 14? 15. Day 15 today for the year. I haven't missed a day yet as well. So it's, the whole thing is about not breaking the chain. And that really helps me to almost bring my main goal, which is to positively impact people's lives, to the focus of every day, because I got that wall chart and I'm like, right, have I done anything to help somebody today? And then I'll go out of my way to do it.
Oh my God, I
Wow, I
love
love
that.
that.
Oh, you said the same thing anyway.
I talk about the exact same thing then.
No, I love everything you're saying. And I think the reason why I love it so much is because your mindset reminds me so much of mine and Grace's mindset. Like, we're saying very similar things. And because we always say how, like, fully believe that certain people are kind of put on this earth, would you say, to kind of like serve and heal in a way. So I feel like you probably were always meant to do that. And it's about like going through life's, like the ups and downs of life, and just following your intuition and knowing that you're going to end up where you're supposed to be, because you can tell by the way that you speak that what you're doing is bringing so much value. Like, I'm sure it's bringing value to way more than one person. And I just love how you say that about you want to inspire one person, because we always say that as well, like one person.
Yeah.
If it's one person, it's enough.
Yeah. No, this is it. Like, if you can impact one person's life, you can impact 10,000, 100,000, million. I think it's just a lot of people aim for the big number. They're like, I want to make, I want to change 100 million people's lives. But how do you do that? How do you actually? You can build up a plan in your mind, but sometimes the easiest way of doing it is just to start by helping one, focus on that. And I think the path will unfold then to an extent. There's something I wanted to mention as well. I think you said about it just now. You said that we often have regrets and things that we wish that we didn't do and things like that. I personally don't have any regrets in life. Even the bad stuff that I've been through or done. The way I've kind of adopted my mindset to work now is that if something goes wrong that I shouldn't have done, and I'm like, oh, fuck, why have I done that? I catch myself and I think, actually, wait, there's a lesson I can learn from this. And if I don't see the lesson straight away, I'll try and figure out what lesson there is in there for me. And by doing that, like I said, I go to bed and I know I've got no regrets, because even the bad stuff I've learned from, and I know that I can make up for that in different ways throughout my life as well. And I think too many people get caught up on the stuff that they've been through, the stuff they've been through, but stuff they've done, stuff that they've directly had a part to play in. When you hold on to that stuff, it really makes it difficult for you to move forward in life, because you're always, kicking yourself down. And I think that's where negative self-talk comes from as well. Like, oh, I'm useless, or I'm this, I'm that. And the way we talk about ourselves is so important, because we spend 24 hours a day in our own head. And I think if we're talking to ourselves very negatively based on stuff that we've done in the past, we're setting ourselves up for, not a worse future necessarily, but not the future that we'd like for ourselves.
Yeah, you've got a very resilient mindset. You've very much turned everything around and seen what's the lesson in it, and moved forward with your life massively in a positive way. So in terms of resilience, I want to talk to you about, obviously, the sea dips, the cold water therapy. You're obviously so passionate about it. You seem on your social media to go and do it every day. I've seen you call yourself the Welsh Wim Hof. We've wanted to speak about cold water therapy on our podcast for a while. I'm really curious about it, and obviously there's loads of people talking about it at the minute. It's becoming a really, really a hot topic. But the main thing I'm hearing from the benefits of it is that it's hard. It's a really hard thing to do that you don't want to do, but you do make yourself do it, and it's building that resilient mindset. It's doing the hard stuff so that the hard stuff doesn't seem as hard. You can do more difficult things, push yourself more out your comfort zone, and the kind of impact it'll have in that way. And I know there's obviously there is mental health benefits and physical health benefits from it as well. But so how did you get into your sea dips? You've got your sea dip group that I see you have in Swansea, where you've got a group of people that come and do it with you. Where did that all start? And, what's your motivation behind that? And what are the benefits that you've seen from that? How's it impacted your life?
Okay. I love talking about this, actually, because there's so many different elements to it. So when people have asked about the benefits, I'm like, right, you know what? I'm like, there's this. I'll list a few things, but I'll say, I'll send you a few videos on it, just because there's, I find myself repeating it a lot, to people all the time. But it's kind of, there's so many different elements to it. So, for example, when I started it, I did it a couple of years ago, once every now and again, and things like that. But mostly through the summer months. I never really went in the winter up until Christmas 2019. And that was basically, it was on Christmas Day. I went there, and I think we did a 5K, then went in the sea, and that was an in and out job. We weren't in there for long that time. But then this year, 2020, I started paddleboarding. That was the initial thing. I started paddleboarding. I was loving it. I was in the sea a lot more. I went in with friends in wetsuits and stuff like that as well before we started doing the cold stuff. So we'd have a little swim. But then it was weird because what we started doing then was like workouts on the beach. Me and a few friends. Then we'd have a sea dip afterwards, right? And that, like I said, this was in the summer, but we just started doing it more and more. And as it was getting colder, it was getting more addictive. Like the benefits of going in the sea in general, like you feel cleansed after it, you feel refreshed after it. And like anytime it's relatively cold anyway, but it's just kind of I don't know, it rejuvenates you almost, like it sets you off for a really, really good day. So like I said, in the summertime we started it, but then as the winters kicked in, we've just maintained it and carried on. And then more and more people started doing it. And then all of a sudden, like people were asking me about it, oh, can I join, etc., etc. And then it just become this group, and all of a sudden now, pardon me, I think there's like 40 to 50 people, probably about 50 of us actively that go just from our group. But there's loads of different groups that have done it for so much longer. There's a group of older guys and their wives, and they're down there every single morning. I think they're on day like 180 odd now. They're in Langland every single morning in the sea, and they've been doing it they've been doing it for nearly half the year now. And it's just crazy because there's so many people which have done it for so long. But in terms of the benefits, like you said, you've got the mental health benefits, lifting your mood, boosting your energy and things like that. So I'd say it reduces fatigue due to the fact that it boosts your circulation. So, your blood's flowing freely through around your body. So that kind of boosts fatigue. So in a sense, you don't really need coffee. Like I've stopped drinking coffee a couple of weeks ago. In terms of the weight loss benefits as well, right? So like I'm not a PT, I'm not a dietitian or anything like that, right? But I've been monitoring the amount of calories I burn every single morning, and I think for a 5 to 10 minute sea dip, I burn anywhere between 500 to 600 calories, within the sea time I'm in the sea, and for about an hour afterwards. So it's about 500 to 600 calories because my heart rate's generally in a fat burning zone, which is also really good for boosting your cardiovascular system. So, I haven't really measured it, but my running's always been pretty good. But I don't run that much, and it's like my running is still really, really good, and I'm able to kind of push my limits and get like personal bests and stuff without training massive amounts. So I do kind of attribute some of that to the fact that my heart rate's in that fat burning zone quite consistently when I'm in the sea, because I think it trains your heart almost. You've also got the recovery element of it. So the cold, obviously, when it impacts your muscles if you've been training. I don't know much about the whole process of that, but like a lot of athletes will have ice bath before and or after training, because of the impact that it has on your muscles. So there's a lot of stuff you can read online about that. The stuff that Wim Hof talks about is obviously the production of white blood cells, flushing your lymphatic system as well, so it clears your blood vessels. The boosting the immune system you get from the white blood cell production. You do feel a lot healthier, in all honesty. Um, you know, thankfully, all of the group that have been going down doing the sea dips, like nobody has said anything, any sort of like cold or flu or the dreaded COVID. Like since we've been going down there, it's quite interesting to see that everybody there, even though it's like a large group of people, everybody's very, very like physically fit, and most of them are much more mentally fit as well. So a lot of people are doing it for the mental health that come, and they found it unbelievable. So I won't say the name, but there is there is one lady who comes who lost her mother during the summer of 2020. It was a real challenge for a real hard time, as you'd expect. And she started doing the sea dips, and she said, like, between training and the sea dips, that's what's kept her going. It really turned her life around and got her through that kind of really difficult period. And there's a lot of other people which have messaged me very similar stuff as well. That they were in a really dark place before starting doing it, and it's completely changed their life. And I think that it's the sea element and the cold therapy element is one aspect of it, but also the social element is a massive, massive factor as well. Meeting people who are they're they're literally in the same boat as you. When you're in the sea, everyone's fucking freezing. Everybody's there. You're all shivering, and it brings you into the present moment as well. You're not thinking about anything else in that moment because it's such a I don't know, a revitalizing but also very difficult experience to go through. And just lastly on that, the mental fortitude aspect of it. I mean, when you I always talk about this, right? I think when you wake up in the morning and it's raining and you're due to go in the sea. So obviously the challenge I've set myself is to do every day of winter. So I'm on day like 83 or something like that now. I am going to try and do the full year after this as well, but I'm just going to get the winter done first. When you wake up and the weather's difficult or you're tired, weather's like rainy or you're tired, for example, it's very difficult sometimes to get out of bed and think I've got to get out of bed to go into this weather in the cold and stuff, to drive down to the beach, then get in the water when it's freezing, then get out when it's even colder. Like if you think about that though, it makes it so much more difficult to motivate yourself and to do it. And what I always say is a bit of a mantra is focus on the outcome, not the obstacles. Because, if you know that you're going to be feeling better for it, or even if you've tried it for the first time, but, you know what the benefits are, you've heard about it. And, you get to see the sunrise or the sunset, for example, and you're down the beach with some good people. I think if you focus on that outcome, the good stuff about it, it makes it like worthwhile then when you actually get through the whole waking up, getting out of bed, going out in the cold, all of that aspect, it becomes worthwhile. But yeah, some days it's a real challenge, and I think the whole mental fortitude aspect of it is when you push yourself to do things that you don't want to do, or you still do them anyway, regardless of not wanting to do them. You're starting to build mental fortitude. Then you are getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's a David Goggins quote. I'm not going to rob that myself, but yeah, it is. It's one of the best things I've ever done. And in terms of my mindset, I mean, I would very much attribute it to me wanting or prompted me to quit my job at Swansea University. So that was my most recent employment I was in before I started doing the coaching. Yeah, I know I've had a lot of different jobs. But that was like, even though that job was on paper the perfect job for me, helping students set up businesses and things like that, I just knew that it was not. It just wasn't like I wasn't resonating with it at all. The pay was great and things. It was the best paid job I've ever had. But I just knew that it wasn't right for me. And going in the sea, I think what it did was reduce my cortisol levels and my stress levels to a point where I thought, you know what? I don't want to be putting myself in a stressful situation unless I feel like it's going to be benefiting me. So I kind of switched off massively after a while then to that job and ended up leaving.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
Probably quite
interesting.
long-winded, but
No, I think it's so interesting. Like me and Grace are so obsessed with this cold water therapy, but like I really want to start it, but basically we don't live near the sea. So I think, Grace, we
We
need to
live
start
near
dipping in the
rivers,
river.
though.
Yeah, well I think
Yeah.
the river is gonna be the option because so we I think you do as well, do Grace, don't we? We have cold showers, but because obviously you heard that's good as well. But yeah, I really, really want to immerse myself into it and actually go and get in a river or something like that.
Yeah, freshwater's weird because freshwater is colder in terms of the temperature. It's a lot colder than the sea, during the winter time. But it's slightly easier. I don't know. It's quite weird, I did 5 minutes, for example, in by a waterfall 2 days ago. Now the temperature it might have been a bit higher because it was flowing water, but generally it was probably no more than about 3 degrees, whereas the sea is like 7.5 at the minute, down in Swansea. And, but the sea, when you're in there, it feels harder almost. I was speaking to someone, and it might be to do with the fact that the water's moving constantly. So it makes your body's moving with it, and it makes it difficult for you to really sit there and concentrate and to, experience the well, experience the cold, but without becoming too cold. I don't know too much about that aspect of it, but I know that like you can do ice barrels. So, pouring a load of cold water and then ice into a barrel. That's one way of doing it. Like the river dips, yeah, that's another really good way. Still water is probably your best bet, because I think the still water freezes over and it gets a lot colder. So if you really want to challenge yourself, that's good. But I wouldn't recommend getting into a frozen lake, or a pond, unless you've got people who are really like, able-bodied and know what they're doing around you. Because obviously, if you get yourself in a sticky situation, you want to
Yeah.
have people around you who know what they're doing. And it's like we've had a few incidents, or one or two incidents at the beach. I wasn't actually there on this given day, but there was one other group who, some of our lot. They were in at the same time. Oh, sorry, actually, no, it was just the other group. It wasn't our lot. But the other group, they went in, and one of the fathers, he had to like swim in and pull them out because they went into a riptide. And it's kind of, there are a lot of dangers associated with it. So I would say to people, anyone listening thinking of trying it, do some research beforehand. Go with people who kind of know what they're doing, or are strong swimmers, and things like that. And go, and don't do it when there's no one else around. Like I'm a nightmare for doing it. Like, because I'm doing the challenge tonight, I've got to go when no one else has gone. When everyone else has already gone. So I'm going to be going there on my own in the pitch black. Like, I definitely don't recommend that.
God.
Yeah, that's just me being me, trying to get trying to fit it in at some point today. But yeah, I would say just be around people who you trust, and trust to get you out if you're in a sticky situation. Really.
Yeah. I really like as well how you said about well, actually I think I saw it on your Instagram where you put like a quote and it said like when people say you must be crazy, it's freezing. But I think it really resonates because it makes you think, like that quote where it's like, to achieve something you have to do, oh, I've just butchered that, but to achieve something you have to do something that other people aren't willing to do. So
Yeah.
like most people would not be willing to wake up in the morning and go in the sea when it's freezing, but you are, and that's how you're going to develop like a really incredible mindset.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you know what, the guys who are doing it as well, they're all adopting, that same sort of mindset, which is amazing to see. They're all they all realize like that they are pushing themselves to do something which is very like uncomfortable, but they love it at the same time. It's a very weird relationship, that you've got between stuff like that. Like like with running, and doing the long distance runs. Um, I love it, even though I put myself through a lot of pain doing it. For example, the 50 miler, it took me just shy of 15 hours because my knee packed in at 28 miles. And I just carried on going. I had my friend ring me at 32 miles, and I was nearly crying on the phone because my knee was just killing me. And he was like, look, he's like, I know you want this, but he said, do think about the long term damage you might be doing or whatever. He said, he said, you've already done 32 miles. He's like, you aren't going to prove anything else. He said, just come back and do it another day. And I was like, yeah, I said, I'll think about it. And he was like, do you want me to come pick you up? I said, no. He's like, you're not going to listen to you. I went, no. Um, and I pushed on then, and I managed to get the 50 miles done. But one of my friends came to pick me up then from where I finished, and he had to help me into his van because I couldn't twist I couldn't bend my knee. Like, it was that. I must have been running on pure adrenaline for so long, but I still loved it. I loved the fact that I was able to push myself to achieve it. And then once I did it, I was like, do you know what? I straight afterwards, I was like, I'm not doing that sort of run again ever again. I'm not running any further. But then the next day, I woke up and I went, do you know what? I'm going to run 100 miles now.
Oh my god.
That's my challenge for this year. I was going to do it at the end of last year, but it makes it very difficult in the winter, to be honest, because you haven't got the daylight. So I'm going to wait till spring or summer starts kicking in, and then I'm going to go for it then, because it takes like 24 plus hours.
Wow. Oh my God. So for somebody that wants to start the cold water, would you recommend just, starting with your shower before jumping into the sea
Showers are
or
showers are quite difficult, to be honest. They are. I'd say start with the shower, because if you can do the shower, you can do the sea. The showers. I think the fact that you're doing it consciously and you can just like turn the cog and put it onto warm makes it more difficult somewhat. But it's definitely a good introduction. Start with the hot shower. put the shampoo in the shower gel, etc., then flick it onto cold for a couple of seconds at the end. Because what that does, it brings the blood to the surface, and then the cold water then helps with circulating the blood around the body, so you feel amazing after it. So I'd say that, try that. But then, if anyone's lucky enough to live next to the sea, and they want to give a sea dip a try, I would tell them to either speak to like the RNLI or somebody who knows about the beach, and if there's any riptides, if there's any kind of dangers in the water. Most beaches you'll be okay, but I'd say when it's choppy or things like that, obviously take caution. Rivers as well, the same thing. Lakes, just take care wherever you go. I'd say always try and do it with somebody present as well. Just so that you've got that person to rely on almost if anything does go wrong. Not to put anyone off, but I do want to like emphasize the safety element of it. But yeah, like just giving it a go. If one of the things which a lot of people find helpful is to get wetsuit, gloves, or boots, because your hands and feet and your head, your extremities, that's where you lose the heat the quickest. In particular your hands and your feet. So I'd say walk into the water, keep your head above the water up until you're ready to go out. And then if you want to put your head under, then go for it. But if you do it straight away, you won't last that long and it'll take you longer to warm up. But yeah, if somebody wants to try it, you could try it with the wetsuit, gloves and boots, just because it takes that edge off. It doesn't make you really cold really fast. And it keeps the blood in your hands and your feet then, so you haven't got to worry about that so much. But also look at Wim Hof. So you can look on YouTube, for example, the Wim Hof method. He's got a breathing technique, which you can do, a couple of rounds of. It's usually about 3 rounds that you do, and then you go into the water. And I think when you do that, you're priming your body for it. So Wim Hof's got a lot of content on all this kind of stuff. I definitely recommend people to look at his stuff and what he talks about, just because I think that'll give them a real insight into what they need to do and how to do it properly and not reduce the risks almost.
Yeah, bloody love Wim Hof. He's great, isn't he?
He's amazing. He is just like excuse me. Just choking on my water. He's like a grandfather figure, but like a really crazy grandfather. That's kind of how I look at him almost.
Yeah, he's so good. But so you've obviously got an incredible mindset from what you've said so far. Are there any other things you do aside? Well, I'm sure there are, but what are the other things you do aside from the water dips that really help develop your mindset?
I do a little bit of meditation, and I've set myself set as a daily habit now to do at least say 5 to 10 minutes every single day of meditation, just because I do find it very beneficial, very calming. I think by creating space between your thoughts, you do give yourself a bit more opportunity to think about what you want to say. And you don't react out of emotion as much. You're able to think more logically, I think, a lot of the time. So I do meditate, now and again. I wouldn't say it's been a massive contributor in the mindset I've built today. I would say, but watching or listening to podcasts, that's been a massive a thing for me. But also just taking an interest in learning. Because this is going off on a slight tangent, but it is kind of relevant. We're in school. We've got to go there to learn particular subjects, and a lot of the time we don't really like those subjects. And I think we almost, sometimes a lot of people will have a bit of a stigma against educational learning because of school, and think like, oh well, I don't want to do that, or whatever, oh, I hate learning. That's like the common thing a lot of people say, mostly like younger people just finishing school. But I absolutely love learning. I think everybody loves learning. It's just you've got to figure out what you enjoy learning. And I think that for me, that's probably been a really good way of developing my mindset, is just figuring out what kind of stuff I like. So I didn't like reading books, but I like reading self-development books, stuff that I can take real life things from. And I feel like I'm getting a piece of somebody else's mindset that's helping me move forward in my life. So I think that kind of thing has been really good. This is, you probably wouldn't have known about this one because I've talked about it on podcasts, but not really in open forum. Like I've done a video on my Instagram about it. But was DMT? Are you familiar with DMT?
Oh yeah, not much at all, but we are curious.
Okay, I was going to say it's a bit of a rabbit hole. This one is. So DMT is a dimethyltryptamine. It's a type form of psychedelic, so it is an illegal substance, but we produce it in our body naturally. It's in animals, it's in plants, it's in us. Now, from what I understand, scientists don't really know the purpose of DMT within the body. But there's a couple of theories and a few books and things which basically say that DMT within the body is the spirit, or it's the spirit molecule, they call it. So there's a guy called Rick Strausman. He's got a book called DMT, the spirit molecule, I think it is, or just the spirit molecule. But there's a lot of content out there. You've got people like Graham Hancock, for example, who's quite a famous, I think you'd call him like a historian or like a scientist, researcher. He's a very famous guy. He's been on Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan talks about it massively as well in loads of his podcasts. Mike Tyson talks about it. There's a lot of quite famous, reputable people who talk about it, and it's not really known about. You know about all of the party drugs and things like that, but you don't really know about this particular one, which is actually, it was one of the greatest learning experiences I've ever had when I experienced this, because it's what a lot of people say is it's the death of the ego, or you die and then you come back. It's quite very daunting, I'll be honest. It's very, very daunting, but that's the basic, the most the closest thing you could say. So I kind of, once you take it, like you're in it for about 15 minutes or so and you come out, but you take a lot of benefits from it. So for example, two of the benefits I took that were from it were that I was giving too much away to people. I was giving too much of myself away. And then the other benefit was, the other thing that realization I came to was that the reason that I wasn't fully content at the time in my life and fully happy was because I wasn't being grateful for what I had. I was always looking at what I didn't have and looking forward to the future. And what DMT forces you to do is kind of focus in on your subconscious thoughts or things that you've buried that are not serving you. So, for example, there's a lot of stuff you can read online about this, right? So you'll have ayahuasca, and DMT is the active compound of ayahuasca. So shamans in like the Amazon rainforest, things like that, they will they'll do ceremonies for people to enlighten humanity. So they've been doing this for like thousands of years, and they're like spiritual teachers, if you like. But they do it because, especially for Westerners, when they take, Westerners go out there, they want to basically kick us out of our sort of mindset that we've got, which is, killing the earth and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff you can read about that. But people who do ayahuasca retreats or DMT, it's like if they were an alcoholic, for example, or they've been taking drugs, anything like that, or if they've got a gambling addiction, ayahuasca or DMT, it almost forces you to focus in on those things that are dragging you back in your life and allows you to change them or to think about them more, like logically and concisely, and then kind of work through it. It isn't to be taken lightly because, people who have got, for example, trauma, PTSD, or like childhood trauma, things that have gone on, it can bring it to the surface and make you feel a lot worse. But I do think that it's a healer almost. It's a form of healing. You've just got to be accepting of it. And also, if you have got a lot of stuff that, you've been through in the past, I think having somebody like a shaman, for example, there who can guide you through it and talk you through what you're experiencing and what it means. Because it's essentially there's lessons there for you to learn. There's a lot of stuff I could talk about with this, but it really opened up my mindset to different stuff, really, and also the stuff that we're not really taught. For example, our third eye in our, what do you call it, like, well, we've got the two eyes which are connected to our brain directly, but you've also got like another eye they call a third eye. Now, that's got a retina. That's why they call it the eye. So it just hasn't got the actual eyeball. But it's called, I think it's the pineal gland. Now, that regulates our sleep-wake cycle, but it's also known as like the Ajna chakra or the third eye in different contexts and different religions. You had the ancient Egyptians. They've got the pineal gland as their as the eye of, I think it's the eye of Ra and the eye of Horus. So it's actually shaped in the same way as the pineal gland, which is in our brains. But when you take like DMT, I think what you do is you access that higher level of consciousness, that third eye almost, And you're able to do this through meditation. You're able to do it through breath work. There's something called binaural tones or isochronic tones. So they respond at a certain frequency and program your brain at that frequency. That kind of stuff as well. You can access it through. I've actually done that as well. So I listened to binaural tones at one point for about 5 minutes, and I kind of went into the same sort of psychedelic state as I did with DMT. So there's a lot of stuff I could talk about with that, but it's a bit of it's a right rabbit hole. I'll be honest. It probably sounds quite weird, but it's very, very interesting stuff, and there's a lot of stuff you can find online about it as well from reputable sources.
I think it's fascinating. Like literally, I've researched quite a lot on ayahuasca actually because I don't even know how, but so I study fashion at uni, but I somehow managed to do a project all on psychedelics because I was just interested in it. So I was like, I'm going to do it on psychedelics. I actually don't know how I put them two together, but yeah, I feel like it's something you could just talk about for hours. I literally think it is so interesting, and this isn't really to do with ayahuasca, but I think I've heard that it's like a similar thing that happens. You know when the near-death experiences. So there's a documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched it, but like me and Grace watched it yesterday. What's it called? Surviving Death, Grace.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it talks about near-death experiences and like so people that have experienced them and they've gone into that level of consciousness. And then that's like the similar thing that you experience through psychedelics, isn't it? Like this state of consciousness where like the ego goes away and you realize that actually nothing mattered. Like as long as like you've loved, that's all that there is. And I literally watched this documentary yesterday, and then I was sat there and I was messaging Grace and I was like, oh my God, like I just feel so different. Like it makes you realize that I feel like so many people are asleep. Like so many people don't know anything about this. So that's why I think DMT and ayahuasca and stuff is really interesting and something that obviously needs to be researched and stuff before anyone goes into it and that. But I just think it's fascinating that things like that can open up your mind and then you're never quite the same afterwards.
No, absolutely not. It's I think you'd probably call it neuroplasticity. You're stretching the walls of your brain. And once you do that, you can't go back. And I'll be honest, it was after doing it and then also doing it with the binaural tones afterwards, that was what really fried me, because I thought when I did the DMT, I thought, well, it's obviously, you're having something external, which is altering your consciousness. But then when I was able to do it with myself through binaural tones, which is literally, you can get them on Spotify, or YouTube, and then I went into the same state. I had the physical sensations, the kind of flurry of energy through my body, the color visualizations, crystallization on the back of your neck, which is when your third eye's open and you kind of know that's what it is. And it was, it blew my mind almost, because I was nearly crying. I was like, what the fuck is this? It almost made me anxious for a while afterwards as well, because I thought this is, I don't know enough about this. Like that again, that's where your ego comes into it. Your ego's like, what is this? I don't like this because I'm not in the driver's seat almost. It's diminishing our ego, which is what causes us to, I don't know, go and buy loads of clothes. It's what causes us to, some people to go and rob other people. It's essentially the root of all evil. But it is an essential part of us as well. But yeah, I think as you become more in tune with your kind of spiritual self, your ego does become less and less relevant. And I think when you take DMT, you have a crash course almost in, ego death, which is like I said, what the experience I had, it was almost like I got sucked into my own brain and became my thoughts. I had no awareness of a body and self. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to eat for lunch. There was the music that was playing, like nature sounds, it was almost like became the music. It's a very strange thing. It's very until you do it, I think you can't really fully describe the experience. But a lot of other people have totally different experiences. It's very individual. It's very individual experience. But like I said, it's definitely something that we don't know enough about collectively as humanity. But I think as we're becoming more and more more and more socially aware and more aware in general about all of the different things. And we've got, for example, platforms like this now with your podcast, and the stuff that you guys talk about, it's getting these messages out there. So I think the, humanity as a collective consciousness is growing almost, where people are starting to become more collectively conscious. So it's yeah, it's definitely worth looking into. Just because, like I said, it is a minefield, but it's stuff that Buddhist monks and like spiritual teachers. There's stuff that they have done through meditation, for a long time. But I think when with psychedelics, it gives you this crash course almost in it, and then you can start to move towards that. That moves your life and direct yourself in that way almost. I don't know. It helps you definitely. That was probably one of the greatest things I've done as well. Because since then, I don't do anything, I don't want to do for money. Like if somebody says, oh, I've got this business idea I'd like to work with you on, I'm like, do you know what, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't want to be doing that for money, so I'm not going to do it. And like, it's not to say you turn away opportunities, but I'm aware that I don't want to be spending my life chasing stuff that doesn't resonate with me or serve my overall purpose and my overall mission. And I think DMT definitely helped me have that realization.
So interesting. I've heard like there's so many people quite openly discussing it on podcasts, and like you said, Joe Rogan talks about loads, but there's so many people speaking about it, and there's so many people go like over to Costa Rica, a place like that, and do the actual ayahuasca ceremonies and have these huge life-changing experiences. And a lot of people have been saying that we don't know that much about it now, but it is helping people, especially with like real mental health problems and stuff, literally turn it around. So something so powerful that can heal so effectively, we don't know that much about. I do think that, as like you said, the collective consciousness of the world is definitely becoming more conscious. So I think that there'll be more research and stuff to come in the future about this, and maybe get adopted more into Western medicine, because it's got such a massive impact on every single person that does it.
There is something actually that was just been, I think somebody sent it to me a couple of weeks ago. So it was, hang on. I think they're looking at DMT for depression. So hang on. Imperial, so the Guardian on the 9th of December in 2020, and also the Independent, they both shared articles basically saying psychedelic drug DMT to be trialed in the UK to treat depression. So it is actually starting to get a lot more mainstream attention. And what they're saying is that, and this is going back to what I said as well, I think when it brings these issues or these things that you from our past almost to the surface, from our subconscious. But then if you've got very deep seated pain and a lot of like really negative stuff that's gone on, it can be like detrimental, to people's mindsets, because it's bringing it back to the surface and causing them to relive it almost. But what they're talking about in the Guardian and the Independent, with those studies, they'll be coupling it up with psychotherapy. And I think for people who are concerned because of, like I said, these this stuff that they've got from the past, I would think twice about it. Just doing it if you've got stuff like that, which could really come back up to bite you almost. I think the psychotherapy aspect of it is important, because it's causing you to they help you make sense then of these thoughts and the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Excited to see where it goes in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Abby, you there?
Sorry, I thought you were going to say something else, so I didn't want to talk over you. No, yeah, me too. I honestly feel like I said, it's something that you could just like research and talk about for hours. I think it's absolutely fascinating. But we wanted to ask you as well. So you can see that I feel like nothing is going to stand in your way with your future. So do you have like a vision for the future, or like, something you're out to do in a way?
Yeah, so my kind of main vision, or my main goal, is to positively impact the lives of 1 million people, right? So now I actually think I've lowballed myself there, but I've set it as that because, once I reach that milestone, I'm just going to up it. Essentially that's which way I do that doesn't matter, as long as I achieve that, as long as I do that. But I am also like, I've got plans for like in the future for what I want to do in terms of building kind of sustainable communities and things like that. So, essentially I won't go into that. That's just like a future plan that I've got, but like I said, what I'm doing now, I want that to be a precursor to get me to where I want to be, to help, the amount of people that I want to positively impact their lives. But then I want to actually help the world as a whole as well. That's kind of so there's a project that I started up about a year and a half ago called Tree Generation. So that was like planting trees. I think we planted about 800 trees in total. I haven't actively put a lot of time into that, and other than when we planted those trees and did the different sessions. But essentially I want to help the world and I want to help people. Those are my two kind of goals. And then in terms of how I do that, it's like I said, it's just just the individual goals I set on the way, really. As long as I'm doing that every single day, I'm making the world a better place in the process. That's kind of my mission, and that's one of the things I do want to go do is go to Australia, but that's like more of a personal thing. I'd love to be doing what I'm doing right now, but from Australia. So that's kind of my goal for the next 12 months, provided COVID allows it.
Exciting. So you've got a very clear, big, anchored why there in your life around what is driving you every day, which is good. I think that's what everyone needs to figure out, is their why in life, because then everything else after that just kind of falls into place. And yeah.
The why thing. Yeah. I mean, I read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And that really changed my, that changed my perspective as well on, the stuff I was chasing. I realized that all of the businesses I'd set up in the past, I wasn't passionate about it. The jobs I was doing, a lot of the time I wasn't passionate about them. I didn't have a why attached to them. And since reading that, I started to obviously look at what I was doing. And like I said, if I thought, right, I'm just purely doing this for money, I'd be like, right, okay, well, why do I need this money? What's this money going to be going to? What's the why behind it? And if it's fine to do little things for business. Set up little businesses if it's purely for money, or to go into a job specifically for money. There's nothing wrong with that. We do need money. But I would try and always attach a why to doing a particular thing, or why do I need that money? Is it to literally like live, or am I trying to get that extra money so I can put towards the business, or so I can go on holiday? It's a good way of doing it, I think, because I don't think you get caught in a rut so much when you've got clarity of purpose of why you're doing things.
Yeah, definitely. And then if you ever get, run off course, you can navigate yourself back to the reason why you started and the driving force behind everything that you're doing. That's great.
We can see you very inspiring. For someone, if they're listening to this right now and they're feeling a bit lost and they're thinking, I need to get my mindset in gear, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
Okay. I would say for somebody, no matter where you are, no matter where you are right now in life, you are able to come back from it and you are able to change, your life. But you've got to initially decide on it. You've got to think, do you know what? I am ready to change my life. I want to change my life. I want my future to be, to be better, but also understand that every bit of change happens in the present moment. So if you are lost in life, ground yourself in the present moment. Try and, there are ways of doing that. Like I said, going in the sea is one of them. Meditation is one of them. There's like washing the dishes is one of them. Ground yourself in the present moment as much as you can, because what you're able to do when you're in that present moment is decide what you want to do that's going to positively impact your life. And positively impact you in that moment, and then just do more of it. But what I would say is just do more of the stuff that interests you, do more stuff of the stuff that you love, and I think you will start to find, what your calling is in life, what you should be doing in life, just because you are exploring more of who you are and what makes you tick. And I think when we're being our authentic selves, that's when we are able to really find out who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, amazing. So true. It's like one step at a time.
Yeah, and just trust the process. Understand it doesn't, it may not happen overnight. Change happens in an instant, but for the world to see it and for you to realize it, sometimes that does take a while. But it's just trusting that it will happen in time, as long as you make those those conscious decisions to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice. Thank you. So to wrap up the episode, we always share a quote of the week at the end of every single one of our podcast episodes. And when we have a guest on, we always want them to share their favorite quote with the listeners. So what is your favorite quote that you want to share with us, and why do you love it?
I was going to ask you about this. Can I give you a short poem instead?
Oh yeah, go for it. Whatever you want.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this when you said you were going to ask me about a quote, and the reason I wanted to do this is because it was the one that resonated with me. I've got it on my movie. I do know it off by heart, but just so that I don't mess it up, I've got it. And the reason why I want to do this one is because when I was in school, my English teacher, who was I owe a lot to him in a sense, just because I found him very influential, and he was also a really, really tidy guy, so you could resonate with him a lot as well. But I was almost in school, I was messing around a lot, and I was trying to be like everyone else, and just be like Jack the lad. And all of a sudden, he just went absolutely nuts with me one day, like over the top, and something very small. But he did it because he wanted and he told my parents, like, Ryan, he's getting a bit distracted at the minute, but he was very positive about me as well. And he said, look, the reason I've done that is because I can see you getting involved with the wrong crowd almost. You're wasting your own talent. But he used to recite this poem every single day in the English class. And we used to, at the time, we were like, oh, here he goes again. But we forgot all about it, right? Me and one of my friends then, we came across this poem a couple of years later, about the same time, actually, because we spoke about it. We were like, oh my God, do you remember that poem that, Ginger Williams used to recite? And all of a sudden I realized that the poem resonated massively with my life. And I try and live my life almost, in the metaphorical sense of this poem. So it's called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And it goes like this. So, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveller. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the paths in there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. The reason I love that is just the last paragraph kind of says it all. I mean, whether you take it in the literal sense of being in the woods and taking, having two different pathways and taking the one less trodden on, or the actual sense, the metaphorical sense of it. That's kind of always what I've wanted to do. I've always gone against the tide. I've always wanted to do something different. And I think when you do that, you start to almost discover who you are as a person, or you unlock who you are as a person. So that kind of poem, it really resonates with me for that reason.
Wow, thank you. Thanks for sharing. It's great.
Yeah, I love that.
So where can everyone find you that if they want to, Instagram, you've said you've got a podcast, obviously you've got your mindset coaching and stuff. So where can everyone find you?
So my Instagram handle is Ryan Stevens, that's with a PH and then 3 underscores. Or you can get in touch with me on my coaching page, which is ryanstevens.co. And if anyone is interested in listening to the podcast, it's called Ideas and Beers. We've done like a range of different podcasts. I have like different guests on from all different walks of life. So I've had some military guys on. I've had a ex-professional football player on. I've had people who have been in, somebody who's been to rehab for drugs. There's quite like a variety of different people I've had on. But yeah, you can find that on YouTube or any Spotify, any of the other channels. But if anyone's got any questions, anyone wants to ask me anything, Ryan Stevens, at 3 underscores on Instagram, that's the best one to get in touch with me on.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Ryan. It's been great to chat. You've got a really interesting story. We've covered off a lot of very interesting topics. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We really, really hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget to go and check out Ryan because he shares loads of inspiring things. You can also watch him go for his mad sea dips every day.
Yeah, go follow him on Instagram. He is a vibe. But thank you so much for listening, everybody. Really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, share it on your Instagram or come and talk to us in the DMs and let us know what you thought. We love hearing what you guys think of the podcast and chatting to you on there. So come and join our community on Instagram at Finding Your Feet Podcast. That is where we are every day of the week. So you don't need to wait until every Wednesday to hear from us. You can contact us and hear from us every day on Instagram. That's our main hub. But subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and leave a review for your chance to be featured in the review of the week next week. And hit follow if you're listening on Spotify so you never miss an episode. We release them every single Wednesday. And sometimes if we're feeling nice, we release a bonus episode on a Sunday. Also, we have a mailing list. So literally just go to the link in the show notes and every Monday morning we send you a positive email. There's no marketing. It's literally just like a positive wisdom-filled email to start your week off right. So if you want to join our mailing list, link is in the description, and go and check out our website as well because we've got our positive affirmation shop on there. We also host online workshops. We haven't got any available at the minute, but we are going to announce a new one very soon. So make sure you're following us on Instagram so you always know what is going on with Finding Your Feet.
Yeah, come and chat to us. And definitely, if you've got this far, go and leave us a little review and let us know what you thought of this episode.
Yes. And if you would like to watch this episode on YouTube, you can. It's on our podcast channel, which is called Finding Your Feet, the podcast on YouTube, which is also linked in the show notes if you want to check that out. But thank you so much for listening, everyone. And we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye.